Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Football Amigos show. It's your boy here, Mide. Happy to all have you back. It has been a while. We haven't spoken to you all in a long time, but we're back. We're back. Of course, we have our other two amigos here. Ayer, have you been?
Been good, been good. Yeah, looking forward to the session. Yeah.
That's awesome. And of course, Sam, doing well.
Yes, sir. You already know.
That's great. That's great. Yes, Football Amigos, thank you so much for some of the views we're having in some of our late videos. Continue to share them, continue to like them, subscribe to the channel. Looking forward to reading your comments definitely down below and excited to have you all back. Now that the dust has settled, the Premier League is over, all of the European leagues are all over as well. Now we can look back and see basically today the focus is trying to figure out the most improved team of this past season. There has been a lot of teams that we've watched. I'm not going to mention United, so because I can see some people already smiling about that. We definitely have not improved, even though we won a cup and Arsenal didn't. Oh, anyways, yes, there were some teams that definitely have done well this season, and today we try to focus on them. And one of the good things, amigos, that you're going to enjoy with this podcast and videocast is that we're going to talk about these different teams from different angles, right? From a coaching perspective, from a statistics perspective, and just overall organization and management of a team and how they've done in terms of performance in the Premier League this past season. So I think for me, we'll go around everyone, and of course, we'd love to hear your opinions. Definitely, amigos, definitely go into the comments. Let us know what your favorite teams are and most improved team, and also maybe one or two things, one or two sentences about exactly what they've improved on, because that generates conversation with other amigos and just helps us give us a different perspective. Because at the end of the day, your thoughts, your comments mean a lot. We want to hear from you. So definitely add those comments below. All right. So mine personally for this season will be Crystal Palace. I'd love to hear from the other amigos. Sam, what would be your most improved team for 2023-2024 Premier League season?
Wow, I've got tons. I've got Everton. I've got Crystal Palace. But as a Liverpool fan, amigos, you already know I don't want to talk about Everton. I'll give them their flowers, but not right now. So I'm going with Crystal Palace.
Good choice. Good choice. Good choice. How about you, Ayo?
Obviously, Crystal Palace comes to mind. We all watched the Man United game, but I think
Oh,
I was
there
gonna
we
go
go.
in a different direction and just call out Nottingham Forest. Just the fact that we were expecting all three teams that came up to go down, and Nottingham somehow survived, and we gotta dig into that and see why. Yeah.
Awesome. No, that's a great choice. I'm actually really excited and intrigued to hear more about Nottingham Forest, and they actually did survive and will be coming back to the Premier League next season. So, Sam, we'll start with you. You mentioned at the beginning of the podcast Everton being one of the most improved teams in this past 2023-2024 season, and you also mentioned about Crystal Palace. We would love to hear more about what you saw in that team, especially with what they've been through this past season, not necessarily play well under Sean Dyche, and then having some issues with the Premier League in terms of financial financial misconduct around transfers, getting points deducted, but still surviving even with that, with a very strong defense. So Sam would love to hear more about how you feel Everton is one of the most improved teams.
Absolutely. Regardless of me not wanting everything to do well, I really think they put off a really good season. Like you mentioned, with all the legal concerns, points withdrawals, it has a lot to do with their mentality. If you can stay in the game despite 10 points and it got reduced to 5 points, and also sitting close to relegation a few times, I don't know how they pull it off. I really think um, without spending too much time on them because they're just on the other side. My most improved team, honestly, is Crystal Palace. And I would just tell you, they changed from March. And this is where coach, the impact of a coach is it cannot be underestimated. Maybe you're a coach, you know what that means. I hope they give you your flowers, but it is extremely important to change coaches when needed to push coaches to improve. When you look at Crystal Palace, I'm going to look at the last 6 games. I'll just look at the last 5 wins they had. They had 5-0 against Aston Villa. They had 4-0 against 4-0 against that
Oh gosh.
you already know.
Oh gosh.
No, Manchester, the other Manchester that didn't win the title. Then they had 3-1 against Wolves United, then 2-0 against Newcastle. The big games, honestly, is United, Newcastle, and Aston Villa. Aston Villa was sitting pretty good. We thought that game was going to be a tie. But the key thing that changed, that really improved the team for me, is the forward. You have a combination of Eze, Matata, and Olise. They just had a way to something lit. There's a fire that lit under them. I really think they transformed the team from the forward and it got to the defense. The defense was really good coming close to the end of the season. So with the numbers, with individual performance, and ultimately the collective work done, I would go for Crystal Palace for sure, anytime, any day.
No, those are great points, Sam. Especially elaborating about Everton and your strong defense, but really honing down into Crystal Palace and your front three of SM Ateta and Elise. Yes, 100%. I agree with you. They were exceptional starting from March all the way till the end of the season, really. And if so one of the pundits mentioned if they had started the season at March till the end of the season, Crystal Palace would have won the Premier League. That was how good. That was how good they performed. So interesting insights to both teams. Aya, we'll move forward to you from a Nottingham Forest perspective. I mean, this is a club that the previous season they were they spent the most money buying the most players. Like they literally changed not just their team, but the entire squad up to about 26 players that they changed, and they have spent a lot of money. And in between that, they changed their coaches to the new coach they have now, Espirito Santo. He's one of those coaches that he likes to organize his teams. I would love to hear more from you about, based on that organization, how they performed really throughout the season, really, from an improvement standpoint.
Thanks, Mide. Uh, I picked Nottingham Forest because they were just the unlikely team to stay up. They went against everything that you would assume is necessary to build a functioning, effective team. Like you said earlier, they brought in over 20 players, new players. They had to do that last season as well. Uh, and you have all these players from different countries speaking different languages under a coach who obviously was incredible in Cooper, who brought them from the championship. And this was after 23 years of being outside the Premier League. He brought them back in, and you go and you try and see what happens. Cooper's trying to bring some kind of identity into this club and shape a vision for success. But very early on, it's clear it's not working. So Cooper, even though the entire time he retained the faith and the love from the fans, you could tell that some of his ideas were very hard to translate because, like you said, they're all new players. It's very hard to get coherence, a shared vision, and identity. And he just ran out of time. And so it was clear by December, the hierarchy had lost faith in him. And so they looked and they brought in, Espirito. And from then on, the transformation was incredible because we talked about Everton, how they got docked I believe they docked. Is it six and then four? Well, I think they got docked twice, didn't they? Am I recollecting this
Yeah,
incorrectly?
it got
Yeah, but
they had a higher number and it decreased.
decreased. Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought they tagged on a little bit on top of that as well because there were two breaches. But let's not go into the two details. But there was also a breach by Nottingham Forest. It was very popular. They couldn't clear a sale by 30th of June, and so they were docked 4 points. And so one thing I did notice, and this is harking back to Sir Alex and actually Marino, is the need to create a siege mentality. There's nothing more like a siege mentality to bring the club, to bring the fans, to bring the coaching staff, to bring the players together when you feel like everything is going against you. And so it's almost as funny where it's like, oh, you guys are struggling, we take points off you. Like you'd think that would destroy them. But I think Nuno Espirito, he used that to galvanize the team and bring a sense of shared identity. And he also was very fluent in multiple languages. And so, whereas Cooper had trouble translating his ideas and running the coaching sessions with people from so many different backgrounds, Nuno Espirito didn't have that problem. And so they were able to just bring a coherence that, they got great results against Man City. They got great results against some teams, but they also reached safety with at least 6 points, right? And that's taken into account that they were ducked four, so they could even be further ahead. And I think it's just seeing when everything's going wrong, sometimes that's not a bad thing. Because if everything, if it looks like everything is, what's it called, going against you, you almost have to look internally and grow. And I just saw a ton of people just grow. And there was also in Cooper's defense, there was a ton of injuries at the beginning. So a bunch of the people they brought in got injured. And so that obviously, if I mean Man United, Mide, you're a Man United fan, so you understand like night and day. You got talent or you don't. And so by the time Espirito was in the club, they were all coming back from injury, and so he had a fully fit squad, but he also had to do it, and he galvanized the team. And so I think in terms of from the beginning to where it's like, oh God, this is a disaster of epic proportions, to somehow building some kind of patchwork of identity. And because when I watch your games, I didn't quite see so much brilliance as I saw discipline and desire. It's where it's like, like Nottingham Forest. You're not gonna do anything gonna be like, oh my God, this is gonna change football. But you see how they do the little things well, how they defend very in a very disciplined, clear. Your two banks of four, very clear. Everyone covering each other, very very clear, and their counterattacks were pretty good. And so it's almost like it seems so easy, like to the if you're a lower team, you just gotta defend well and counter, right? But it's so hard to do. It's so hard to keep that concentration, that backing each other up for a full 90 minutes, and they did it. And that's why, for me, I think they're the most improved team, because them staying is a miracle. Yeah.
No, I totally agree too. And in adding to that, there was one game that I remember them watching. I think it was against Newcastle, and Wood scored 3 goals. He scored a hat trick, and I'm looking at myself. This is one of those. This is a New Zealand striker that doesn't score much, and then all of a sudden he's scoring a hat trick against a top 5 team, and you start to wonder. The influence of a coach is very key to how teams perform, which is a wonderful segue to talking about Crystal Palace, right? The biggest reason why they did so well, and to me, one of the most improved teams in the Premier League, and will possibly be that next season if they can carry on what they've done this season, is how strong the effects of a coach are. This is a club that was under Roy Hodgson, and Roy, he's one of the most experienced coaches, one of the oldest coaches in the Premier League. He has vast experience in coaching, some 30 something years, right? Of course, he knows what he's doing, but What he did was he created a team that was defensively minded. They had a clean 4-3-3 formation when they had the ball, and they had a, you know, 4-5, 4-5-1 situation whenever they didn't have the ball. And they mostly sat back with a lot of teams. And what tends to happen is when you sit back that far into your own half, you invite pressure. And if the team passes you around and pulls your defender out of position, those spaces will start to open for them to take those opportunities. And a lot of teams did, right? I remember towards the end of, towards the beginning of this year, I think it was sometime in February, they played against Arsenal, and I watched that game, and I just felt really bad for them because, as much as we were trying to defend, they just couldn't stop Arsenal from scoring, and it just went from bad to worse. And unfortunately, Roy had a an illness that required him to basically resign as a coach because he needed to face some of his health conditions and get better. And I hope he's getting better and recovering right now. So of course, the club had to take a step back to make a decision. While all of that's going on, Oliver Gleisner, he was coaching Frankfurt in Germany, and they were doing well. They were pushing for top five in the German Bundesliga. That's what it's called, and they were doing really well. I mean, he was the coach that was making Garassi play so well. When everyone's talking about Garassi scoring about 20 goals this season, I think he ended up scoring 24 in total this season and really brought out that player in him. So it's the same coach that did that, right? But of course, they terminated his contract by mutual consent because Frankfurt just had a different coach that they wanted to bring in, right? So when all of this happened, Crystal Palace took a chance on Oliver Geisner, and he's one of those coaches that they've every team he's coached that I've realized they're very consistent in doing the same things well, right? And when they don't have the ball, they know exactly how to work as a team. So coming to Crystal Palace, I was kind of watching from afar. Okay, so he came in March, right? And between March and the end of the season, within the space of a month, not only did he change the formation from a 4-3 from a 1-4-3-3 that he played before for the longest time Roy Hodgson have been there to a 1-3-4-3, and you know, as Sam mentioned, with the front three of Mateta up top as a center forward, and then you have the likes of Olise on the right and Eze on the left. You had a team that had a focal point when they had the ball. You had the team that started to make intricate passes and to actually started to dominate the ball more. Not only were they efficient when they had the ball, they had a final destination and an end product to all of their decision making all over the field. They played some top teams that one of them was my team, and they beat us 4-0. It was one of those games where I just sat back and took my fan hat off because I couldn't wear it anymore, and literally just watched how good they were and what they did, especially from a coaching standpoint. Watched what they did when we had the ball versus when we didn't have the ball. And you could see that consistent efficiency all throughout the team. Personnel is also very important to this as well. When you change formation in the team, the personnel you select and their qualities and abilities in that formation is very important. Especially when you move from a 1-4-3-3 to a 1-3-4-3, you have three defenders, then you have four midfielders. The ones on the outsides are seen as defensive wing backs on the left or on the right, and then you have three attacking players. Wherever those outside wing backs are on the left or on the right, they are one of the most hardworking players on the field because they have to go forward when we have the ball, and you have to go back when they don't have the ball. And using that tactic against big teams and him not even changing, because normally in the Premier League, amigos, what tends to happen is if a big team like Man City come to town, right? Most teams that don't have that much quality will sit back in a 1-5-4-1 formation or 3-5-2 to just soak up the pressure and pray that they don't concede 5 goals. That wasn't with Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace is one of those teams where, regardless of who they played, they kept the same formation. They knew their jobs. They knew what they needed to do, and it was, to be honest, at some point it was mesmerizing to watch, especially that Aston Villa game where they scored 5. It was very impressive. Again, what's the point of this? Coaches have a very strong effect on a team. The formation he selects and the personnel he selects based on their quality also have an effect on that team. And then one more thing that when I read did the research about the coach is he's very positive. He's very positive. He's very realistic. He's very positive. He doesn't blow smoke up, on players. He level sets them. He tells them what they need to do, and he encourages them when they're struggling. So overall, Crystal Palace lights out for me, most improved team in the Premier League this season. Amigos, would love to hear your comments as well too. Please put a comment below. Let us know what you thought about, just Crystal Palace as a team, and when you watched them, what did you notice that they did well? How do you think they're going to perform next season? We would love to hear that. The transfer window is officially open right now. I would love to see how they handle the transfer window, not just from a coaching standpoint and a recruitment standpoint, but also as a club. How much money do they invest in this coach to make those decisions, to bring in those players that hopefully can replicate the same thing they did between March to the end of the season in May. Sam,
Right.
I final thoughts. What would you like to add to that?
I think for the Crystal Palace one, I think you hit the nail on the head. One thing I also want to add, two things, and this came from higher. The the success of a team is not just in the folks on the field. When you look at Crystal Palace, they also their players were in good form. They were in good healthy form. Like they had less injuries. Although their defense, you have folks like Nathaniel Klein, Michelle, they were not like the top notch. So they had less injury, they had discipline, and they had a great desire. So you see the front three coming back to push in and help out the midfield. The midfield was really like the blockage. So Klein and Michel are always kind of like going off of each other, and the midfield is always there. Uh, Anderson, the defender, could be better. Hopefully, they can strengthen that defense going forward. But it's just great team effort from the coaching staff, from the medical as well. Whatever it is that they're doing to make sure these guys are not running off their legs, being disciplined, outstanding, outstanding work. Higher.
Yeah, really, really, really big fan of Crystal Palace. I mean, by the time we play them, this was before the change, so we hammered them 5-0 when it came out, but it wasn't like a indicator of where they were. I think the biggest difference for me from when I watched them play, yes, because again, like we're all talking as outsiders. I don't know, like I'm talking about like Nottingham Forest, but I don't really know too much about the team. I just know how it felt watching them, and just a little I could get from the Athletic on insiders' views on how the club's identity and structure changed. But whenever I look at other teams, the question is, which is where I think the improvement was, is if you say, "Come at me, bro," right? The best teams will knock you out, right? So even if you're going to be mainly defensive, because I wouldn't even say Crystal Palace were that defensive. I think they press really well in the mid block, right? I don't think they like to withdraw too, what's it called, too far back anymore. What they did was they trusted themselves to be disciplined, keep their shape, and know how to hurt you in transition, which is reaching out to Mide and Man United, which is what your coach is going for, because that's one thing he really did well in that final. It wasn't so much as, oh, we need to get the ball back, is that we know exactly what to do when we get the ball back. And with Eze, Olise, and Mateta, you had three people that they knew exactly what to do. And it was just so apparent, no wasted movement, no dilly dallying. bam, bam, bam. And Mateta, really, I know people are talking about uh Eze and Olise, but I think Mateta should have his dues because he was finishing chances at a ridiculous rate. And so I think there's an element of that where you see teams from like, okay, we're just trying to survive. No, no, no. Or then we move from we're trying to thrive. And I think Crystal Palace was like, no, no, no. We will thrive. We will defend you. We'll meet you. Not full on counter press like the big teams would do, like Liverpool is known for, but they'll meet you in a mid block. But as soon as they get the ball or there's a misplaced pass, they know exactly how to hurt you. And I think that's impressive. I mean, how many coaches figure that stuff out on a week by week basis? I mean, how many coaches have those three players? But how many how many coaches figure that out on a week by week basis? That's very impressive. Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing to mention that I was reading some article where I mean, Bayern Munich, they now have a coach in Vincent Company, which that's a whole nother conversation that we need to have, by the way, on a different podcast, guys. Amigos, let us know if you like to hear more about that appointment and what you think we amigos would like to say about that in another segment, hopefully. They actually reached out to Crystal Palace when they were looking for a coach after sacking Thomas Tuchel, and Crystal Palace said, "Give us £100 million." That's how much they rated their coach at that point. Which I thought it was very disturbing that Bayern would want to do that when he just moved there. I just thought that was weird, but that's how much he was prized at just within the space of 2 months that he was there. This article came out in April, and he really started in March. So you could see how again the effects of a coach, how he sets them up, and the tactics around what they do when they have the ball versus when they don't have the ball is very critical. It really is. It's really that simple. There could be so many philosophies you might hear from different coaches today, but at the end of the day, most important thing as a team, what are you doing when you have the ball? What are you doing when you don't have the ball? Based on the quality and talent you have in the team and in the squad in general. That's the most important thing. So, like I said, amigos, would love to hear more from you all. Please leave your comment below. Let us know if you think Crystal Palace is not the most improved team. That's okay. We want to hear more. We want to hear what those teams are and why you think they've improved this season. Because, of course, your opinions always count. Like always, like, share, and subscribe, amigos. It's been great talking to you all. Sam, final words from you.
All good. Thank you, amigos.
Guys,
That's awesome.
before we go, and this is going back to the Everton and Nottingham Forest thing. I just remembered when I was back in high school, I tried to do a cross country race for the first time. I think I was in GSS one. I don't know GSS one or two. I don't know. I don't remember anymore. GSS two, and I tripped and I fell in like the first maybe 30 yards, grazed my knee like there was blood coming out, and I just like got up and I just ran, and I got back and I got second. Like, and it was such like a weird thing of like when you trip or something happens, like sometimes you just get enter a state of clarity where it's like, okay, don't think about anything, just run. Like kind of like Forrest, run Forrest. And I think there's something to put that to with Everton and Nottingham with that points deduction and all the media where it's like when something that just happens and just hits you and you just like land because like both of them both times they got dock points they both dropped to the bottom, right? I guess maybe by the time Nottingham got hit, I think Sheffield was uh was entrenched, but in general, like they just got up and they just ran. And I think like there's something to be said. Like obviously you don't want to fall down and trip every 40 yards, like at the start of every race, but it is funny how psychology works, whereas like I don't think I would ever performed as